The Disappearance at Wolf Creek, a true story that still haunts Montana. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button, because after hearing what happened in Wolf Creek, you'll never go camping the same way again. It all started on a cool September morning in 2012. Wolf Creek, Montana, a quiet, scenic place known for its long pine valleys and echoing hills. Three friends, Ethan, Maya, and Cole, decided to spend the weekend hiking the ridge near the creek. They were all locals, born and raised just a few towns away. People who knew the area like the back of their hands. The trio packed light, tents, sleeping bags, a camera, and Maya's phone, the only one that had service in the hills. They laughed as they loaded the truck, not knowing that no one would ever see them again after that weekend. By the time they reached the woods, the air had already changed, colder, stiller. Locals said Wolf Creek had its own kind of silence, like the forest was holding its breath. Even the birds didn't sing much there. They parked by a small dirt road, crossed the wooden bridge over the creek, and followed a narrow trail into the forest. The trees grew thicker with every step, their branches clawing over the path, shutting out the sky. The group stopped once to rest, and that's when they heard it, a distant howl. Cole joked, "Guess we've got company," trying to sound brave. But Maya noticed something strange. The howl didn't echo like normal. It was low, almost human, and it came from both sides of the forest, as if two things were calling back and forth. They shook it off and set up camp near the ridge that overlooked the valley. The view was beautiful, but unsettling. You could see for miles, yet it felt like something could still be hiding just beneath the trees. That night, they built a fire and sat around it, roasting marshmallows and telling jokes. Ethan recorded a few clips on his camera, planning to upload a small vlog later. Everything seemed fine until the wind stopped. It was sudden. No breeze. No insects. Not even the crackling of the fire. Just silence. Then came the sound, a faint growl deep and steady from the woods behind them. Ethan grabbed his flashlight, pointing it toward the trees. Nothing moved. Then another growl, closer this time. Maya whispered, "Maybe it's wolves," but even she didn't believe it. Wolves rarely came this close to people, not in this part of Montana. Cole threw a stick into the dark and shouted, "Get lost." But the forest stayed quiet. No running. No sound of retreat. Just waiting. Minutes later, something rustled near the creek. The flashlight beam flickered, landing on two eyes, glowing amber, watching from the dark. Not moving. Just watching. Ethan whispered, "Do you see that?" and started recording again. The camera caught faint footage, a figure low to the ground, too big to be a normal wolf. Then the battery died. They ran back to their tent, zipped it shut, and sat in the dark, whispering about what they saw. The air outside grew heavy and faint footsteps circled the camp. Slow. Careful. One step at a time. Maya reached for her phone, hit record, and whispered, "It's 2:17 a.m. We're hearing something outside the tent. It's walking around us." The recording captured a low breathing sound, rough, wet, and too close. Then, scratching. A slow drag across the tent wall. Ethan grabbed his hunting knife. Cole held the flashlight tight, waiting for it to end. But after 10 long minutes, the sound stopped. They didn't sleep the rest of the night. When morning came, the forest looked calm again. Sunlight cutting through the pines, birds singing like nothing happened. They laughed it off, trying to act normal, but Maya noticed something strange near the edge of the camp. Tracks, dozens of them. Wolf prints, but too large. And around them, a circle. Like something had walked around their camp over and over again through the night. Ethan said it was probably just shadows and wind. But Maya took one last look before they packed up. She noticed claw marks on a nearby tree, 5 long, deep grooves that hadn't been there before. That evening, she sent a voice message to her brother back home. "We're fine," she said, trying to sound calm. "Just something weird last night. Might stay one more night before heading back." That was the last message anyone ever heard from her. By Monday morning, none of the 3 hikers had returned. Their families grew worried when all calls went straight to voicemail. By Tuesday, the local sheriff's office in Lewis and Clark County launched a search and rescue mission, one of the largest ever held around Wolf Creek. Deputies, park rangers, and volunteers gathered at the trailhead. The weather had turned cold overnight, a strange fog rolling through the valley like smoke. Locals said it wasn't common this time of year. Even stranger, the howling had started again. Search teams split into groups. One went down the old riverbed, another followed the ridge where the trio had camped. Maya's brother Eli joined the search. He was the one who'd received her last message, and he couldn't shake the feeling that she'd sounded nervous, not her usual self. About an hour into the search, one of the rangers found the hiker's truck still parked where they left it. Keys in the ignition. Doors locked. The ground around it looked untouched. No footprints, no signs of struggle. It was as if the vehicle had been frozen in time since the day they arrived. Deeper into the woods, the team discovered the campsite. The tents were still there, zipped shut, sleeping bags neatly spread out inside. The campfire ashes were cold but undisturbed. Nothing seemed out of place, until they found Ethan's camera lying a few feet away, half buried under pine needles. When they played it back, the footage was dark and shaky, only bits of sound came through. At one point there was laughter, then silence. And then, a faint growl followed by heavy breathing. The clip ended with Ethan whispering, "Did you hear that?" before the camera cut off. That night, as the search continued, Eli and a few rangers set up camp near the ridge. They wanted to retrace the group's path. The fog thickened and the forest fell quiet again. Even the crickets went silent. Eli couldn't sleep. Around midnight he heard it, the same low howl Maya had described before. It started far away, then grew louder. Closer. He grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside the tent. The beam cut through the fog but revealed nothing except trees swaying in the wind. Then he saw them eyes. Not one pair but several, glowing in the dark. "Wolves," one ranger muttered. But Eli shook his head. The eyes were too high off the ground, spaced too far apart. The figures stood motionless, just watching. After a few seconds, the lights vanished into the mist. The next morning, searchers found new tracks circling their temporary camp. Deep paw prints that went around in perfect loops, almost identical to the ones found at the missing group's site. It was as if something had been following them. The rescue teams called in more dogs to track the scent, but the dogs refused to enter the woods. They barked, whined, and pulled against their leashes, refusing to move forward. One handler said he'd never seen trained dogs act that way before. Later that day they found something else, a torn piece of fabric, caught on a broken tree branch about a mile from the campsite. The color matched Maya's jacket. Beneath it was a single footprint, human, leading downhill toward the creek. The searchers followed it, hoping it would lead to answers. The trail ended near the water, where the ground turned muddy and soft. There they discovered the outline of what looked like claw marks in the mud, long and deep, like something heavy had been dragged through. But no body. No more tracks. That night, as the teams regrouped at the base camp, Eli sat alone by the fire, staring into the flames. The sheriff approached him quietly. "We'll keep looking tomorrow," he said. "The forest doesn't give up its secrets easy." But even as he spoke, a sound echoed from the trees, a distant howl, low and drawn out, followed by another, closer this time. The men looked up. The forest went still again. One ranger whispered, "They're not just wolves." The next morning, half the volunteers didn't return for the second search. Some said they heard voices calling their names in the night. Others claimed to see large shadows moving between the trees. By the end of the week, the search was officially suspended. There were no bodies, no signs of struggle, just whispers of movement, howls in the dark, and the cold silence of Wolf Creek. But Eli refused to stop. He returned alone the following weekend, determined to find out what really happened to his sister and her friends. He never came back either. Weeks passed after Eli vanished. The official search was over and Wolf Creek was sealed off to the public. Locals said it was for wildlife protection, but everyone in town knew better. People whispered that the forest didn't want to be disturbed, that those who entered never came back the same. By October, snow had started to fall. Most had stopped talking about it, but one man, Deputy Larson, who led the initial search, couldn't let it go. He'd worked dozens of missing person cases, but this one haunted him. Something about the silence in that forest felt wrong. He decided to return alone, against orders, to document everything himself. He started just before dawn, his radio crackling in the cold air. The forest looked peaceful under the snow, too peaceful. The fog hung low and even his footsteps sounded muffled. He followed the same path as before, past the frozen creek and up the ridge where the hikers had camped. When he reached the clearing, the campsite was still there. Tents half buried in frost, cooking pots rusted from the rain. Everything exactly where it had been left. Time hadn't touched it. But there was something new, a fresh set of prints leading away from the camp. At first he thought they were human footprints. Then he realized each print was twice the size of his own boot, spaced far apart, like something walked upright but carried weight it shouldn't. The tracks led deeper into the woods, twisting around fallen trees and ending at the mouth of a narrow cave near the ridge. He turned on his flashlight and stepped closer. The entrance smelled of damp earth and something else, something metallic. He took a breath and went in. Inside, the air was colder. The walls were scratched, the marks uneven but deliberate, like claws carving symbols. As he moved deeper, he spotted a torn backpack half buried under rocks. He recognized it immediately. It belonged to Maya. His flashlight flickered, then steadied again. The beam landed on something pale near the wall, a phone, its screen cracked but still intact. He picked it up, pressed the power button. It turned on for a second, showing the last video file saved on it. He played it. The screen was shaky and dark, but the voices were clear. Ethan whispering, "It's outside." Cole asking, "What is that?" Then a low growl, not quite animal, not quite human. The camera turned toward the tent flap, where two glowing eyes stared back before the video cut to black. Larson's hand trembled. He backed toward the entrance, but something moved in the dark behind him, slow, heavy breathing. The kind that fills the silence and tells you you're not alone. He raised the flashlight again. The beam caught a shape at the far end of the cave, tall, hunched, its outline shifting as if covered in fur that rippled with movement. For a second, the light caught its face, eyes too large, teeth too long, before the flashlight went dead. He stumbled backward, running through the snow until he reached his truck. The radio crackled to life just once, his voice breaking through. "If anyone hears this, don't come back to Wolf Creek." By morning, a ranger found his truck abandoned on the same dirt road as before. Engine running, driver's side door open, and fresh snow covering the footprints that led toward the woods. The sheriff closed the case officially, calling it an unfortunate series of disappearances. Wolf Creek was declared off-limits soon after. But even now, years later, people who drive by the valley at night swear they can still hear howling. Too deep, too close, too human. One hiker recently posted online about camping near the ridge before the area was closed. His photos showed long claw marks on a tree and what looked like paw prints circling his tent in perfect loops. Locals say the forest still remembers. The wolves there don't act like normal wolves, they don't attack, they don't run. They just watch. Always circling. Always waiting. And sometimes, if the wind is just right, you can still hear a woman's voice whispering from the trees, "It's outside."